Hi, and welcome back. I am Dr. Diane Craig, and this is Too Soon to Stop, the How to Reinvent Yourself channel at any age. I am very excited to be with you today and can't wait to get started. If you have been spending any length of time following this channel, you know that I am a huge fan of inspirational quotes. Well, here's another one. Just because someone cannot check off everything on a list that is required to be competent doesn't mean that they are not better at whatever they do than the rest of us. This is a quote by Jessica Pearson of Suits, portrayed by the very talented actress Gina Torres. When I was going through my training in the mid to late 80s, it was not necessary at that time to be trained in emergency medicine in order to practice medicine in the emergency department. In fact, the hospital that I trained at in the early 1980s did not even have an emergency medicine residency program and did not come into existence until after I had completed my 4-year training program of internal medicine and pediatrics. This program allowed me to obtain double board certification in both of these fields and prepared me to take care of both adults and children. I did cover the emergency department night shift by myself as a resident physician to make extra money during my 3rd and 4th year of training until I completed my program. I did desire emergency medicine at the time, but wanted to try to see what would happen in the fields that I had trained in first, so I accepted a job at family practice with a group that took walk-in appointments. I thought this was the best of both worlds at the time. However, I quickly realized that I really wanted to practice emergency medicine and therefore accepted a position for this. However, this was at a children's emergency department, so I only saw kids. I was later able to acquire a job at another facility that saw both children and adults, which was more to my liking. It did not matter at the time that I was not trained in emergency medicine, as I was still qualified to do the work, and so I was hired. However, in the 1990s, this all changed, and being board certified residency trained in emergency medicine did become a requirement for many emergency rooms, especially those in large cities. Kind of like having the rules changed on you in the middle of the game. So how was I supposed to carry out my desire to practice emergency medicine without the training required despite my years of experience? Well, for a while, I did walk away from emergency medicine. This was because I could not find a job in the emergency department in the city that I was living in at the time. I therefore did urgent care and even did occupational medicine. Occupational medicine is where companies send their employees to get pre-employment physicals. It quickly became quite evident to me, however, that this was not a good fit for me. It was not challenging enough for me and lacked the variety I craved and saw while in the emergency room. So I did what so many doctors did in my position. I took a job in a smaller rural emergency department where the requirements were not as strict because there simply are not enough board-certified residency trained physicians to go around and fill these positions. So what winds up happening is that physicians with the more comprehensive training wind up working in the city surrounded by other specialists at their beck and call, while the physicians who are not emergency medicine board certified trained but have plenty of experience, like me, practice in these smaller hospitals. The irony is that it requires much more ingenuity and know-how to get the job done with limited resources available in the rural areas. In the city, a specialist is just a phone call and an elevator ride away. In rural areas, if a specialist is needed or the patient is too ill to be cared for at the outlying hospital with limited resources, that means at least an hour's ambulance ride to get the help needed to help the patient out. Unfortunately, we are made to feel less than because of our lack of formal training despite the experience and getting the job done, helping out many people. We are judged by inner city physicians surrounded by specialists. Despite being only emergency department physician for miles and miles around, we were being told that we don't know what we're doing and even judged many times because of the locale we are practicing in. Never doubt your capabilities just because you do not possess what society says you need to possess to get a job done, especially if you have natural talent but lack either the financial capabilities of acquiring the proper training or do not look like what society says you need to look like in order to do a job. Also, because it is impractical for you to go back to school because of life's responsibilities, but can still very aptly complete a task. Remember, some of the most successful people in the world are college dropouts. I was obsessed with the practice of emergency medicine. I was going to practice emergency medicine, period. I was not going to be denied. I did not know how it was going to happen, but it was going to happen. I would not let others tell me what I could and couldn't do, especially when I know I could do it. So I was willing to put myself through various challenges in order to make it happen. I would practice in small rural emergency departments with only 6 beds. Of course, the pay was so low that I could not afford to support my family and myself, so I knew I had to think of something else. I even attempted to go back to get more training at a residency program. However, even though I got an interview, I was never offered a position. By this time, I was almost 20 years out of training from my first board certification. So I applied to larger emergency departments with better opportunities, and fortunately, I got hired. However, in the middle of my employment, they decided that they too were going to use the residency trained emergency physicians. So once again, I was out of a job. This happened to me more than once. One of the times I was only given 11 days notice before I could no longer work in their emergency department. I was leery about signing on with this particular group and even asked them point blank if they were viable and if I was able to stay there for a long period of time, and I was only interested in signing on if this was a possibility. They assured me at the time I could. However, a year later, they were telling me that they had to let me go because of my training. I found it very interesting that I could work and cover the night shift one night, and then the following night I was no longer qualified. I knew that this was a decision that was being made without giving me and others like me the benefit of the doubt. So I kept looking and, of course, training. I would do comprehensive emergency medicine review courses once a year for years just to stay on top of things and keep my fund of knowledge current. Finally, one day out of the blue, I was standing in my kitchen when the phone rang. I almost never answer the phone, but will allow the answering machine to get the call, and if someone was there that I wanted to speak to, I would pick up and answer the phone. But this time, I picked the phone up without knowing who it was. It was a headhunter. They offered me a job at a larger emergency department approximately 2.5 hours from where I was living. I couldn't believe it. Years of filling out applications for jobs, and finally it paid off. I, of course, agreed to take the position that was being offered as a locum tenens. I got the facility and I loved it. The staff at the facility could see that I was qualified to do the work and offered me a permanent position on my first day. The rest is history. I've been working at the facility for 13 years at the time of this writing. So why am I telling you this? Because if you have a dream, you cannot let obstacles stand in the way of making your dream a reality. It may seem like you are up against all odds, but you have to be creative, and sometimes you have to take out your hammer and saw and make your own doorway to make things happen. And that's okay. Just don't ever give up. I have made this quote before. Life is a song. Do not let anyone write your song for you. Till next time, praying for your success and wishing you the very best.